Welcome to Film vs. Film, the podcast where we break down cinematic adaptations of The Great Gatsby and analyze how they bring F. Scott Fitzgerald's book to life. I'm Christopher.
I'm Jackson.
I'm Eric.
And I'm Nehemiah.
Today we'll be diving into the two film adaptations of The Great Gatsby, the 1949 and 2013 versions, to see how they can interpret themes, moods, and characters.
The Great Gatsby is one of the most celebrated American novels, but translating its intricate symbolism and complex emotions to the big screen is no easy task.
Exactly. So in both films, both the 1949 and the 2013 adaptation, they actually make certain creative liberties in order to communicate the main themes like love, ambition, pursuit of American dream. But so we're going to be looking at how they compare.
So we'll be discussing the mood, motifs, characterization, and dialogue in each film, breaking down what works and what doesn't.
And of course, we'll talk about how different directional choices shape the way we experience Gatsby's world.
So sit back, grab a cup of coffee, maybe a couple of cold drinks, considering the heat in some of these things, and let's talk Gatsby.
Let's get started.
First, we'll talk about how these two adaptations, The Great Gatsby from 1949 and 2013, convey the mood and the themes of the original novel. Fitzgerald's novel is rich in symbolism and tension, and one of the most intense moments comes during Gatsby's confrontation with Tom at the Plaza Hotel, described in this quote from the book. "I never loved him," she said, with perceptible reluctance. "Not at Capeloni?" demanded Tom suddenly. "No." From the ballroom beneath, muffled and suffocating chords were drifting up on hot waves of air. The 2013 version really leans into the symbolism of the heat in this scene. You can see the characters sweating, shifting uncomfortably, and becoming more agitated as the temperature rises. The heat itself almost feels like another character, pushing everyone towards their breaking point.
But in the 1949 film, on the other hand, we stage confrontation more like a classic Western stand-up. The camera angle sets up a battle of wills, between Gatsby and Tom. This adds more tension that doesn't use heat as shown in the 2013 film.
One major change in the 2013 adaptation is Gatsby's emotional outbursts, something not in the book. While it's not a direct translation of Fitzgerald's writing, it helps to illustrate the pressure Gatsby is under. His anger and desperation makes the tension even more palpable.
Yes, and in contrast, the 1949 version takes a more restrained approach. The characters hold on to a forced stoicism, which creates a different kind of tension. Instead of an explosive confrontation, the unease simmers beneath the surface. It's a different interpretation, but it still captures the emotional weight of the moment.
Moving to Gatsby's and Daisy's first meeting, which is described in the novel by this quote. "For half a minute there wasn't a sound. Then from the living room I heard sort of a choking murmur and a part of a laugh, followed by Daisy's voice on a clear artificial note. I certainly am awfully glad to see you again." A pause. It endured horribly. Here in the 2013 film, it takes its time with the awkwardness. Gatsby is visibly nervous. Daisy hesitates. It's a moment that feels raw and uncertain, just like in the novel. The film really captures the hesitation Gatsby feels as he gets closer to his dream, and Daisy's uncertainty about stepping back into the past.
Right, but in contrast, the 1949 version Zhang quickly speeds through the scene. So Gatsby quickly embrace. There is a bit of awkward tension in there, but it doesn't follow the pacing described in the book at all. So while this is slightly different, it does communicate the fact that Daisy is more idealized in that scene than what is actually going on. Almost like fantasy-like.
Yeah, but that approach also removes some of the layered emotions in the scene. The novel paints their reunion as a mix of excitement and discomfort, but the 1949 version leans more into romance, making their love seem more destined rather than complicated.
And that romantic framing changed the tone of Gatsby's dream entirely. Instead of questioning Gatsby's vision of Daisy's realistic 1949 version, presents their love as something inevitable, just like Gatsby imagined it. It adds to the fantasy, but it also takes away some of the novel's deeper themes about illusion and reality.
So while both films tell the same story, their approaches shift how we experience these key moments. The 2013 version embraces the tension and flaws in Gatsby's dream, while the 1949 version smooths over some of that complexity in favor of a more classic Hollywood romance.
That really speaks to how adaptations work. Some focus on the accuracy of the text, and while others take creative liberties to emphasize certain themes.
Exactly. Now, let's move on to another key point of making a film adaptation, motifs.
One of the most powerful aspects of The Great Gatsby is its use of motifs, symbols that recur throughout the novel to reinforce its deeper themes. The two most famous motifs, the green light and the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eccleston, have been interpreted differently in the 1949 and 2013 film adaptations.
Right, so the green light in the novel describes like this. So now it was again a green light on the dock. Its count of enchanted object had diminished by one. This green light at the end of Daisy's dock is one of the most iconic symbols of the Great Gatsby. It represents Gatsby's unreachable dreams, and thus the American dream as well as his hope. And the 1949 film captures this visually with Gatsby gazing off into the water where he sees the light blinking on the end of Daisy's dock.
The 2013 film takes a different approach. Using the green light as a repeated motif throughout, we see it at the beginning in the rising action and again at the finale. This repetition reinforces the idea that Gatsby's hope, this version of the American dream, defines his entire existence.
The 1949 film introduced the green light in unique ways. Since it starts by following Gatsby, we see him purchasing and purchasing his home and going alone to the dock to look at the light. This creates an air of mystery, and we don't immediately understand its significance.
But the lack of repetition in the 1949 version is a missed opportunity. The green light only appears early on, so we don't see how Gatsby's perception of it evolves. In the 2013 version, progress is clear. At first, Gatsby reaches towards it with a desperate hope. Later, when he reunites with Daisy, the light dims, symbolizing his dream coming true. After his death, the light fades into the mist, showing that his dream was never truly attainable.
That's true, but the 1949 version does it for better foreshadowing because when we first see it at the beginning of the film, we don't really know what it's for or what it represents. But as we progress into the film, especially at the scene where Gatsby and Daisy reunites at his house and they gaze across the water together and they see the light again, that clicks into place. It shows us the revelation of between the light and Daisy and how it's all connected.
Another key symbol in the Great Gatsby is the billboard of Dr. T.J. Eccleston, described in the novel as this. Above the gray land and the spasms of bleak dust which drifts endlessly over it, you perceive, after a moment, the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eccleston. The eyes of Dr. T.J. Eccleston are blue and gigantic. Their red nose are 1 yard high. The 2013 film emphasizes this motif by showing it multiple times, starting when Nick first visits the Valley of Ashes, with narration describes the eyes as brooding over it all, hinting at their symbolic connection to God watching over a decaying world.
Alright, so in contrast, the 1949 film introduces the billboard differently. It first appears when Gatsby stops at George Wilson's garage for gas. One of Gatsby's men even comments on it directly saying, "Sees all, knows all, it." Yeah, like God bought himself a pair of eyeglasses so that he could watch it better. This makes the connection to God more explicit from the start.
The 2013 version takes this symbolism further, making it a visual centerpiece in the scene of Morrical's death. As she's struck by the car, the eyes of Dr. Eccleston loom in the background, emphasizing the moral decay of the world. It is a chilling image. If God is watching, he is either indifferent or powerless. Daisy escapes justice while Gatsby and George suffer for the crimes they did commit.
But the 1949 film takes a different stance by showing it at the beginning of the film where the goon comments that God needs glasses, indicating that his eyesight is failing. That's showing that he's unable to judge the world anymore. He can't see the world anymore. That morality has already fallen apart.
So while both films recognize the significance of these motifs, they interpret them differently. The 2013 version leans into visual storytelling and progression, while the 1949 version uses dialogue and foreshadowing to build meaning.
And that is the beauty of adaptations. Each one chooses what to show the readers and what to emphasize, and that shapes our experience of the story.
Okay, now let's look at the characterization of some key features, particularly Nick, Carraway, and Gatsby. Let's start with Nick's role in Gatsby and Daisy's affair, which is pivotal in both films. One of the more notable moments is when Nick invites Daisy to tea, warning her not to bring Tom. Here's a quote from the novel. Quote, "I called Daisy up from the office next morning and invited her to come to tea. Don't bring Tom, I warned her."
In the 2013 film, this scene is full of tension. Nick's discomfort is palpable, with nervous energy underscoring his understanding of what he's getting involved in. The pacing of the scene is quick, with Nick almost fidgeting as he makes the request, clearly showing how much weight he places on Gatsby's request, while also highlighting his own unease about the situation.
Right, but in contrast, the 1949 film noir version thus has Nick deliver the line without much more emotion, just saying it quite monotonously and staring straight at it. It makes him like less detached from what's going on and more of just an observer that's just there.
Right. The 2013 film, with its heightened energy, actually helps to underscore how desperate Gatsby is. In the book, the request is more measured but still full of longing. In the 2013 adaptation, however, it's portrayed as almost frantic, like Gatsby can't wait another second to see Daisy. This adds a layer of hysteria to his character, giving him more of a neurotic edge, which plays into his obsession, a characteristic that ultimately contributes to his downfall.
Exactly. The 1949 film, however, portrays Gatsby as more composed, which really undermines the urgency of the movement. By making him more in control, it softens his desperation. In the book, however, Gatsby's obsessive behavior is a key theme. His frantic pursuit of Daisy is a reflection of his larger, ill-fated pursuit of the American dream. But the 1949 version loses some of his depth by making him seem far more level-headed, as the book suggests. Now, let's talk about Ella Kay, which is a more subtle yet significant character in the novel. In the book, we learn that Gatsby's downfall is tied to blind trust and illusions, his belief in Dan Cody's promise of wealth, and later, his obsession with Daisy's love. A crucial moment in this chain of illusions is when Ella Kay steals Gatsby's inheritance. In the novel, this is mentioned in the following quote. The arrangement lasted 5 years, during which the boat went 3 times around the continent. It might have lasted indefinitely, except for the fact that Ella Kay came aboard one night in Boston, and a week later, Dan Cody inhospitably died.
In the 2013 film, however, Ella Kay is barely mentioned, if at all. Her role in Gatsby's past and his pursuit of wealth is largely downplayed. By omitting her, the film makes Gatsby's lost inheritance seem like a trivial setback, almost like an afterthought. This omission weakens the narrative of Gatsby's rise and fall, as it disconnects his personal history from his ambition and downfall.
Right, but on the other hand, the 1949 films gave Ella a much more prominent role. Now, we see her talking and conspiring on the ship of Captain Cody, and this follows a film noir where she acts like the femme fatale, the alluring and dangerous woman that motivates the character. And so this, we can see that how her portrayal of Captain Cody directly ties into Gatsby's obsession with becoming rich, of trying to achieve his dreams, because he believes that's the only way. So in this version, her presence looms much larger. It casts a shadow upon Gatsby's inevitable tragedy.
Yes, the 1949 film makes her character pivotal to Gatsby's storyline. By keeping Ella Kay visible, the film reinforces the idea that Gatsby's life has been shaped by deception and false promises. She plays a significant role in Gatsby's downfall, just as Daisy does later. By removing her from the 2013 version, the film loses a crucial point of foreshadowing that ties Gatsby's fatal flaw of blind idealism to earlier events of his life.
That's a great point, Jackson. The 1949 version's focus on Ella Kay gives insight into Gatsby's misguided trust in people and illusions, showing us early on how those same illusions will shape his tragic fate. Without her, the 2013 film skips over an important element that contributes to the character of Gatsby.
Let's focus on a different aspect now. How do the different movies present dialogue?
Sure, let's start with a quote from the book. Sometime toward midnight, Tom Buchanan and Miss Wilson stood face to face discussing in impassioned voices whether Miss Wilson had any right to mention Daisy's name. Daisy, 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 shouted Miss Wilson. I'll say it whenever I want to. Daisy, Daisy. The scene is incredibly important in the book because it shows Tom's violent tendencies and his oppressive control over the people around him. In the 2013 film, the moment is intensified dramatically. We see Tom lash out physically at Myrtle, striking her hard, which is a stark portrayal of his cruelty. The physical violence really drives home the theme of patriarchy, and the recklessness of the wealthy in this era.
Right, that's right, Jackson. But in the 1949 film adaptation, the scene is completely omitted. Like, we don't see it at all, because we don't see any of the roughness of the party or anything that happens. We only just see Daisy getting in the car and getting picked up by Tom. We don't really see what happens and how it is shown.
Exactly, Eric. The 1949 version downplays Tom's relationship with Myrtle entirely. His affair with her, which is central to his character, is almost entirely glossed over. By removing this, the film misses out on one of the key themes of the book, the corruption of the American dream through privilege and moral decay. The affair and Tom's aggression represent the hypocrisy and sinfulness of the rich. By omitting this, the film distances itself from the novel's critical social commentary.
Absolutely right. And when we look at the 2013 version, Tom's violent act really stands out. However, I would argue that the film can be seen as using this movie as a shock factor too. The exaggerated violence might feel a little too on the nose, almost like it's a bit shallow portrayal of Tom's character, no pun intended. It definitely makes the patriarchy theme much more explicit, but it could have explored Tom's act in a more nuanced way instead of just using the scene for visceral impact. However, as faithfulness to the book goes, it's definitely closer to the 1949 version.
Alright guys, let's take a look at this scene now. The officer looked at Daisy while she was speaking in a way that every young girl wants to be looked at sometimes. And because it seemed romantic to me, I have remembered the incident ever since.
Right. In the 1949 film, they expand upon this by showing a scene where Daisy and Gatsby are together. Like Daisy is like begging Gatsby, she's pleading like, let's get married now. But because of what had prior happened in the film, Gatsby says no. He instead says that he wants to go make a fortune for himself first, and that she should ask her to wait for him. So now that initial rejection of Daisy at the ball shows how his obsession with changing his past is taking him so far that he would even reject his dream girl.
In the 2013 version, however, this scene is mostly glossed over and we don't get the amount of detail on the ball as much as the 1949 version does. The past relationship between Gatsby and Daisy is more ambiguous and leaves it unclear whether their love was real or just a fleeting moment that Gatsby has clung on for years. Personally, I think that the 2013 version does a better cinematic choice here, as it builds more mystery around their relationship and adds tension more to when they meet later.
Excellent point, but I think the 1949 film does a better job in terms of staying faithful to its exploration of Gatsby's character development. In the novel, Gatsby's obsession with Daisy is rooted in the idea that he needs to make more money first before he can be with her. The 1949 film highlights this much more clearly. Gatsby's initial rejection of Daisy at the military ball because of his financial insecurity is essential to understanding his motivation throughout the story.
I agree, Nehemiah. The 1949 film's focus on the military ball scene shows Gatsby's rejection of Daisy and is an important piece of his character's journey. It reveals that Gatsby's pursuit of wealth and status isn't just about materialism, but about trying to rewrite a past that he believes was robbed from him. The 2013 film skips over that, which makes Gatsby's later fixation on Daisy feel a little less justified. By omitting this, we lose the critical connection to Gatsby's personal history and his tragic obsession with reclaiming the past.
Exactly. And I feel like the 1949 version gives that clear motivation for Gatsby's actions, which is more in line with the novel's themes of regret and the futile attempt to recapture lost time. The 2013 version, on the other hand, is more focused on the spectacle and emotion of the movement, leaving some of those motivations in the background.
Alright everyone, let's move on to how directors' visions of their respective films, otherwise called cinematography, affects and changes their faithfulness to their original Great Gatsby. Starting with this quote, everyone. So we read on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. This quote, the last line of The Great Gatsby, is a powerful reflection of the futility of trying to escape the past. It's at the very end of the book. In the 2013 film, it includes it in the closing moments, and what's more interesting is that the 1949 film omits it entirely. The absence of the line leaves a gap in the film's message about nostalgia and an unattainable pursuit of an idealized past. It's almost like the film loses its very essence of Gatsby's tragic journey.
I agree, Jackson. While the 2013 film embraces that iconic line, the 1949 version doesn't include it, but still finds a way to visually express that same idea. Instead, you get a poetic line. Nobody came to this party, Jay. This line highlights the contrast between the grand parties that Gatsby used to throw, trying to reach that unattainable dream, and a lonely, desolate funeral that Nick arranged for him. It's a visual representation of the hopelessness of Gatsby's pursuit, which ties into the theme of boats against the current. It's also a subtle but effective way of showing how Gatsby's quest for the past ultimately leads to isolation.
I think the 2013 film does an exceptional job visually leading up to that final quote. The camera pans out as Gatsby reaches for the green light, which gets brighter and brighter before being consumed by mist. That green light, so central to the film, becomes the symbol of Gatsby's impossible dream, and it ties directly into the concept of boats against the current. As the camera zooms out, the words from the quote appear disjointed, floating across the sea, connecting us to the physical text of The Great Gatsby. It's a powerful visual that amplifies the theme of this novel.
Right, but in the 1949 film, while it doesn't have the same conclusive ending, it portrays his funeral as more empty, it's more simple. there's no grandcaster, there's no photographers flashing, no paparazzi, but this contrasts really well against all the glamour that we have shown throughout the film. You know, it contrasts about how all of this color, and then after that, which is nothing, is simple cognitive approach.
That's a great point, Eric. The 1949 version is much more direct in capturing the emotional stakes of the scene. The way the camera focuses on the two men facing off, with Nick in the background, puts all the emotional weight of the confrontation. In the 2013 film, by constantly shifting focus and cutting away to different reactions, the tension is diffused and the scene feels less intense.
So when we take a look at the cinematography in both adaptations, it's clear that both films approach the visuals differently, yet both convey key themes of the novel. The 2013 version uses ambitious, flashy camera work and bold visual cues, like the green light and disjointed text, to evoke the novel's core ideas of the unattainable past. But in doing so, it sometimes sacrifices the grounded tension that the 1949 version achieves through simple but powerful shots. The 1949 film uses straightforward cinematography to underscore the isolation and loneliness that come from trying to relive a past that can never be recovered. So that about wraps up the discussion. Do you guys want to go over the key points we made throughout to summarize this? Personally, I think the 2013 film adaptation did a much better job.
Right. Like I was repeated emphasis of the green light motif reinforced the changing dream that Gatsby pursues. From the unreachable dream to the ordinary light and the decay as it fades away, whereas the 1949 film does not show the transformation around.
Right, but in terms of characterization, I think the 1949's edition of Ella K really helps out the film because it shows us some more insight into Gatsby's obsession with money, why he later goes on to reject Daisy. It really helps tie the two up together. Where the 2013 skimming over it, it really let out on a big key point on why Gatsby is the way he is.
Another most important part of making a film adaptation is being able to show mood and environment that a book can only describe. And 2013 film adaptation was able to exploit this much better than 1949 film, especially the confrontation between Gatsby and Tom at the Plaza Hotel, where the sweat dripping down from the characters and facial expressions of Tom and Gatsby showed the heat of the scene much better.
When it comes to cinematography, both films did an excellent job. And in that exact scene you just described Nehemiah, the static camera angle in the 1949 film adaptation keeps the focus in between the two men in the confrontation, using the staging of the scene to make up tension that they could not show due to budgeting. But the ending show of the camera panning out from the green light as the camera moves into the water is very powerful, which carries the unattainability of the American dream described by Nick in the book much better. The 1949 version fails to do that with much sudden ending that does not carry the message as strong.
But I think the most important aspect in both the book and the movies is dialogue, and as we have discussed, the 1949's film of the decision of including a new scene showing Gatsby's rejection of Daisy at the military ball showed his motives and obsession with rewriting the past more explicit, carrying out the message of what caused Gatsby's downfall.
So then, in conclusion, the 2013 film adaptation was able to emphasize some of the key points that the novel expressed, while the 1949 way of introducing new novel perspective that gave us more insight into how everything happened and makes the characters more linear.
Yeah. Alright, well, this will do it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in to Film versus Film. We have had a wonderful time today, and we will see you all later.